any woman in any job. Diversity of thought and an ability to pursue her dreams is exactly what the women trailblazers of the past fought for. If the suffragettes hadn't been willing to go against the men of their time, certainly none of the women sitting on this dais would have the opportunity to question you today. So what would you say to those that claim you are not an adequate replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg because you do not march in lockstep with her judicial philosophy?
Well, I think that judicial philosophy is an appropriate and an important topic for this committee to explore at the hearing. And I think each of the senators has a responsibility when a nominee comes before you to ask what the judicial philosophy is. And I think disagreeing with the judicial philosophy that I or any other nominee had is perfectly admissible grounds for voting no, because you may have a different vision for what a justice or a judge is to do. And so I have no problem with that. I mean, I think that is how the senators on this committee have viewed their role. And so to, on philosophical or, jurisprudential grounds, I mean, I think that's part of what, or, a lot of what this hearing should be about. I think that there's room on the court, and I don't think this just in terms of the women, but I think this for all members on the court, there's room for different approaches to the Constitution, and I think those approaches shouldn't be broken down into partisan boxes because judges are not partisan. They do get appointed and confirmed by the political branches, but judges don't have campaign platforms, and they no longer associate, as I've said a number of times through the hearing, judges stay out of politics. So their jurisprudential philosophies are not designed to yield particular results. So I think there's room for different jurisprudential philosophies that, by the way, even when they start and approach texts from different ways of thinking about it, sometimes yield the same result. It's not necessarily the case that two justices who, one being a pragmatist and one being an originalist won't end up at the same place. They just might get there a different way. Or even originalists, I mentioned yesterday that, there are many who identify themselves as progressive originalists. So originalists, could start at the same place, and, I suspect that, they would disagree, end up in different places, and I've given examples of that. So I think there's room, and it's good and healthy for different approaches to the Constitution and to have debates about that.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that answer. So as we've been sitting through these discussions, I've heard a number of my colleagues bring up different descriptive words to describe you, and I'd just like to review a few of those right now. Respect, intellect, character, jurisprudence, clarity, demeanor, humility, dignity, independent, exceptional. I think that you are exactly what we should embrace. And as I look at future generations of men and women that might want to serve on our Supreme Court, I hope that they would espouse those attributions as well. And while we have this national stage, I would like you, Judge Barrett, to share some grains of wisdom for those future generations. What advice would you offer to those who are just now embarking on their legal career, and how should they define success and find motivation to, kind of, quote, leave their best on the field, if you will, at the end of each day?
Well, I think, I loved the practice of law. Some professors go to the academy because they don't enjoy practice that much. I actually really, really enjoyed practice, and then when I went to the academy, I really enjoyed that too. I would say that, especially when you're beginning your legal career, often you're at an earlier stage in your life when you may have fewer other obligations or fewer family obligations and maybe more energy. So that it's, I guess I would just say, live life to the fullest, seize all of the opportunities you have, and do your best. But at the same time, never let work crowd out all of the other precious things in your life, like friends and family and faith and exercise. I had a law professor who told first years who were very, very anxious and studying hard in exams to make sure that you gave yourself time to go take a run or go work out. I mean, I think all of those things that make up our lives apart from work, can't be shoved aside. At the same time, however, you should seize opportunities and pursue them while keeping in mind your whole person.
Yes, the whole person. Thank you. So when we sat down, Judge Barrett, I told you a little bit about my daughter, Libby, and she's studying pre-law right now. And she sent me a text this morning as we were in this room. And she said, I have to fisk an article on Judge Barrett. So we had this discussion of fisking a while back.
I don't know what that is.
So I had to ask her what it was, and I actually Googled it to make sure I had the right definition. But fisking, the process of shredding a written argument line by line, parsing the meaning and providing counterpoints. So their instructor provided the class different articles about you, and they have to go through now and fisk the article. And she said, okay, so here's the whole text. I have to fisk an article on Judge Barrett, and honestly, what an amazing woman. So I just want to share that little bit of encouragement that while there may be others on this committee that disagree, I would share with you that there are thousands upon thousands of young women out there that see the role that you set, and I went through all of those descriptive words that my fellow members have shared through the course of these hearings, but those thousands and thousands of young women that see you as someone they can aspire to be. And I know that she is in a very diverse group of friends. They are racially different, they are religiously different, but they're all young warriors, all of these young women. But they are very excited to have you in front of us. I would say that many of her friends are not Republicans. They would affiliate more with Democrats as well. But they do see you as someone they can aspire to be. So thank you so much for setting such a great example for women of all different thought processes. And what words of encouragement would you like to share with the young women like my daughter, Libby?
I think I would say to be confident, to see what she wants, to have a plan. One thing I've often told my own daughters is, that you shouldn't let life just happen to you or sweep you along. You should identify what your objectives are and identify the kind of person that you want to be, and then make deliberate decisions to make that happen. My dad used to tell us not to make a decision is to make a decision. So I would say, make decisions, be
Wise.
confident, know what you want, and go get it.
That is fantastic. And, I have 4 tenets that I live by, or pillars of success. And those 4 pillars are leadership, service, prudent risk, and gratitude. And so, I would like just to give you a couple minutes. You've already spoken to a few of those. You've talked about service and what it means to serve your nation. And you actually went through prudent risk in deciding to subject your family, your friends, yourself to this process, but deciding it was for the greater good. I'd like to give you just a moment to express some gratitude as well for those that have helped you get where you are today, and share maybe how they mentored you along the way.
Sure. Well, I think, as for probably so many people, my parents are the ones who I would have to express the most gratitude for, because, they encouraged me at every step of the way. They've encouraged me and supported me and loved me and shaped me and given the values that I have. And then as I've had my own family and my own children, then they've helped me by supporting me with my children and reinforcing what they taught me. My professors in law school, we heard the other day from former Dean O'Hara, who was gracious enough to introduce me on the panel. I had so many wonderful professors when I was in law school. I had so many wonderful colleagues once I joined the faculty. When I was in practice, I had so many lawyers that I learned so much from. And then we've talked at great length about Judge Silberman and Justice Scalia, the judges for whom I worked. And so, you know, I guess they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to mentor anyone into who they become as an adult. And so I'm very grateful for the whole village that I've had that's brought me to this point.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Judge Barrett.
Thank you. Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Your Honor, hi.
Senator.
How are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm sure that part of that smile is the fact that I'm the second to last Democrat. I just want to jump right in because I actually found some of your responses to Senator Hirono are really compelling around the public charge issue, and that you dissented in the case. And if I could read it, you wrote that at the bottom, the plaintiff's objections reflect disagreement with the policy choice and even the statutory exclusion itself. Litigation is not the vehicle for resolving policy disputes, because I think the DHS's definition is a rational interpretation of the statutory term public charge. But you were saying to her, which I really found compelling, that you were still leaving the door open for it to be capricious. Was that the word you used?
Yes, so the standard of review under the Administrative Procedure Act would be arbitrary and capricious. So I said at the conclusion of the dissent, because the majority reached both, I said at the conclusion of the dissent that I wasn't resolving that issue because it hadn't been briefed before us, but I just wasn't expressing an opinion. I thought we needed a fuller record. So I did leave open the possibility that the rule would nonetheless be arbitrary and capricious.
Yeah, as I said to you on our phone conversation, trying to read all of your cases, it has been a Herculean task, as has probably yours, preparing for this so quickly. And so maybe I can just go back to asking just a simple question that I hope you'll feel comfortable asking. It's just what I think is an obvious answer again. But do you think it's wrong to separate children from their parents to deter immigrants from coming to the United States?
Well, Senator Booker, that's been a matter of policy debate, and obviously that's a matter of hot political debate in which I can't express a view or be drawn into as a judge.
So I respect that a lot, but I think the underlying question is actually not hotly debated, and just maybe I'll ask it one more time. Do you think it's wrong to separate a child from their parent, not for the safety of the child or parent, but to send a message? As a human being, do you believe that that's wrong?
Well, Senator, I think you're trying to engage me on the administration's border separation policies, and I can't express a view on that. So I'm not expressing assent or dissent with the morality of that position. I just can't be drawn into a debate about the administration's immigration policy.
Right. And of course, the question does have implications, but a very simple, as I said to you yesterday, that we're debating things that to me are basic questions of human rights, human decency, and human dignity. I'm sorry that we can't have a simple affirmation of what I think most Americans would agree on. But maybe I can jump back to something we began yesterday. I asked you whether you were familiar with studies conducted by the U.S. Sentencing Commission. Do you remember? Criminal justice system, they talk about that considerably. And my colleagues and I on both sides of the aisle, as we worked on criminal justice reform, discussed a lot of them. And some of those, as I discussed yesterday, were examples that federal prosecutors are more likely to charge black defendants who carry with offenses that carry harsh mandatory minimum sentences. They're more likely to charge black defendants than similarly situated white defendants. And black defendants were subject to 3 strikes laws, sentencing enhancements at a significantly higher rate than white defendants, which on average actually added 10 years to their sentence, a significant surrender or seizing of liberty. And you said you were not familiar with that particular study, as you just reaffirmed, or the facts that they cite in the study showing that interracial bias is present in our system. And you know, I think in our discussion, I think it came out that you know that these issues of bias in our criminal justice system are manifest really in many different aspects of the system, from police misconduct, unlawful use of force, to prosecutor bias, sentencing disparities. These are wide and vast areas that have been shown to have such implicit racial bias evident in them. And this dealing with deep issues of bigotry and bias, overt as well as the biases that exist. We know that many of the unjust deaths of unarmed African Americans at the hands of law enforcement have brought this even more into public concern. And so I just want to ask you, and maybe give you more of a chance to discuss. I understand that you weren't aware of specific studies I cited, which are central to the important work of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, which advises federal judges or provides recommendations to federal judges. So I just want to give you an opportunity today to share what studies, articles, books, law review articles, or commentary you have read regarding racial disparities present in our criminal justice system.
Well, Senator, as you know, the sentencing guidelines do give judges guidance on imposing sentences, and so I am familiar with the sentencing guidelines because there's something when we review sentences that, you know, we need to draw on and apply. In addition to the sentencing guidelines, the Sentencing Commission, as you say, does issue studies, or, you know, sometimes we get things from the Federal Judicial Center that talk about it. It's not something, I'm certainly aware of it. I think it's kind of an obvious point that there's still racism.
But forgive me for interrupting, and I'm especially concerned because
that's fine.
Joni Ernst, who's been teaching me about Iowa Nights. I do not want to be mad. I was actually asking specifically any books you can name that you've read on this subject, or law review articles, anything that you specifically read outside of the sentencing guidelines.
Well, Senator Booker, I would say that what I have learned about it has mostly been in conversations with people, and, you know, at Notre Dame, as at many other universities, it's a topic of conversation in classrooms, but it's not something that I can say, yes, I've done research on this and read X, Y, and Z.
I respect that. You've answered the question. So, you know, one of the greatest